If you just type into the search engines, The Secrets of Survival with Joel Skousen, you can watch an hour-and-a-half special report that we did about a week and a half ago that is very, very informative and popular. We're going to do a whole nother 2+ hour report that'll be out in a few months. It's going to have a lot higher production value to educate people out there. And his book, of course, is Strategic Relocation, and it's in the 3rd edition, available at Infowars.com, discounted if you want to get informed and also support the broadcast and his work. Now, he was just on last week, and I don't normally have guests on 2 weeks in a row, but I appreciate him coming on. But so much of what we talked about is now coming out in the mainstream media. Here's the Washington Times today. Russia threatens to strike NATO missile defense sites. That is one of the reports. This is unprecedented. Their head Russian chief of general staff came out and had a meeting with NATO and said, if you deploy those, that allows you to have a first strike. You hit us with nukes, we fire missiles, you shoot them down, you do that, we're going to hit your sites. And I know Joel Skousen's a big expert on what's going on with the Russians, so we'll get his take on that. Also, of course, he's a former Marine Corps fighter pilot. Amazing stories with the carrier landings and Mach 2 events and things like that as well. And maybe he'll tell us some of those on there today, but I doubt we'll have time for that. He told it in the talk we had. Also, his uncle wrote The Naked Communist, and he's the editor of World Affairs Brief and is a top expert in strategic relocation and creating secure homes. In fact, he wrote The Secure Home, the Bible on it. But again, enough of his bio. You know who he is. He joins us on the subject first. The subject first of Obama mentor wanted Americans put in re-education camps, and that came out in the federal cases. And I have that video out, dovetailed, and they wanted 25 million killed. They thought would need to be killed on those bases. And it goes on, leaked U.S. Army document outlines plan for re-education camps in America. And it says, get their Social Security numbers, have PSYOPs, find out the political dissenters. It's all in there. It's for America and also overseas. There's been a false debate about that, but I've read it myself, 300 pages, scanned over it. We have screenshots of all the subsections to give us his take on this, because we were just talking about it last week on air when he was in studio, rounding up dissidents. This is amazing because we know the camps are there, but this is confirming. They're even calling it the Stalinist or North Korean style re-education camp. This re-education, an amazing term to be using that. They don't call it conditioning or reorientation or de-radicalization. They call it re-education and re-education camps. Joel Skousen, what do you make of this?
Well, we're talking about Army Field Manual 3-39.4, and this is a revised field manual from their normal prison camp training manual that they put out to the Army. This has been revised since Abu Ghraib, so that it has, specific and carefully worded concepts about not abusing principles of prisoners and not allowing detention as
Hey, Joel, your phone's a little bit muffled. I know you're on the road about to catch a plane. Are you on a hands-free?
No, I'm on a cell phone.
Do me a favor, talk right into the receiver.
Okay, how's this?
It's a little bit better. Please continue.
All right. In any case, Alex, you're exactly correct. The article that you put out and Paul Joseph Watson wrote for Infowars.com is something that everybody should see. I've read the manual, and it does, in fact, give all of the details about how the Army would implement the lockup of civilians. And it talks about displaced civilians. It's interesting when you read the whole manual, it doesn't raise alarm bells with a normal Army person, because this is the typical thing they prepare for in a combat zone. There will be civilians. There will be displaced civilians, and how you treat them. But it does give certain hints that, in fact, this is going to be used on Americans. It talks specifically about they will have to get an exception to posse comitatus, and they will have to use executive power to get that exception, and they will also seek to get a congressional resolution that we are under an insurgency. And so it's very, very clear that they put legal language in there to try to justify the re-education of civilians. They do talk about psychological operations officers, how they will try to convince these dissidents about the benefits of American policies and actions. So this is clearly a document aimed at Army officers in order to not alarm them. And that's why we have to be careful to say this does not give what the government is trying to do. This is implementation to Army officers, and it's specifically written so it doesn't alert them to what the government is really up to.
Sure, it's dryly written. Most military and police called in and understood this, but one guy called in and just said, well, this is for overseas. This isn't for domestic. And I just had the feeling it was a staged call. It sounded like a psyop.
Well, clearly this is aimed domestically as well, because they do mention posse comitatus and the fact that they're going to have to get an exception. Now, of course, if you were a prisoner under that and you said, look, I've read the copy of the manual, you're supposed to, within 72 hours, give me a right of appeal. I'm to have a determination of whether or not I'm under the Geneva Convention. All that's right in your manual. They'd probably just blow you off and say, we don't have that stuff in front of us, and you don't have a lawyer, and you can't do anything to us. But clearly the language is written in there not to offend the sensibilities of patriotic Army officers. They think they're simply going to be implementing something because of massive unrest and that we have to control populations during a military operation within the borders of the United States.
Well, the point is, this didn't just pop up today. It's been a slow, incremental, across administrations, continuity of agenda towards total control. And then you've got the fact that this is set up, from what I've seen, along a Soviet model. Joel, do you agree with that? I mean, all the terms being used, re-education, loudspeaker systems, the whole way that this has been deployed and set up is exactly what came out in the federal court case with Bill Ayers when they were planning to put conservatives, libertarians, constitutionalists in giant camps and kill 25 million of us.
Well, I do agree with you that this matches very clearly both the Soviet model and and to a certain extent the Nazi Germany model, but more like the Soviet model and even very disturbingly much like the North Korean model. And so I think this is something it has been in recent history, it has been Vietnam, Laos, and China that have used in North Korea, the re-education camps to the greatest extent. These are the people that have the top expertise, including torture, which this manual does not mention. But and I think they're not going to tell the military that they're going to go back to that. But once you get in these camps, of course, there are no rights, there are no procedures. You do as I say is what they tell you.
Well, we know from Abu Ghraib and other camps in Iraq, we know from Camp X-Ray, they have the general camp and they have a special torture camp for special personnel, generally contractors or CIA, where they take people. And so, but expanding on that, they even have pain compliance in jails now. The restraint chairs, the billy clubs, the tasers. Undoubtedly, they're going to be controlling the dissidents in these with torture. But this is only 2 years old, 2010. Why do you think they're now upgrading it and using terms like re-education camp? I mean, that's directly out of, as you said, Stalinist Russia or North Korea. Why not use a politically correct term?
Well, the military, and I'm a former military officer, and I've had prison camp training as part of the Marine Corps as an officer, and they've had PSYOPs is a term that's been around since the 60s. So that isn't particularly new. Re-education is new. It's probably slow accommodation of the American people to get them used to this, but more so, it's accommodation of American Army officers. Ever since the rise of Ron Paul, as you know, there has been a mini revolt going on in the military services against, illegal actions and being called to that. So the military's got a real problem. I think one of the reasons for implementing this kind of language is to ferret out those who might object to it, get them out of the service. That's what all of the mercenaries involved in these past two wars have been involved in order to filter, to vet, to develop a cadre of, frankly, I'll use the word thugs, people who don't have a conscience that will be able to implement this. and they're reaping thousands of these people. They don't have to bring in foreign troops. They're going to have plenty of Americans that will do this to Americans as long as they, can separate the people that have Internet access and understand what the agenda is, and those that are dumbed down yes men in the military. That's
why we're in a race. We talked privately at dinner about the TSA. Now we've confirmed they're now going to be in every city and town, warrantless bag searches, and the Secret Service, CBS News Today, groping all over Chicago. So the feds come to your town and start groping you for the Fuhrer's safety. It's clear. The TSA is here to acclimate us to being stopped, and then, oh, you're on the list. You didn't know you were on the list. You get put in the back of a squad car, taken to a facility, trucked to one of these re-education camps.
But, all of these re-education camps have been very, very difficult to ferret out. I believe that they are virtually all on dismantled or active duty military bases. I have had my subscribers out searching for these and tracking down rumors of what they have, and a lot of those rumors end up being false, but we have confirmed that they do have them on military bases. The Nellis Air Force Base has one, Seymour Johnson.
Yeah, it's generally right out in the middle, and they call it a internment training facility. We've confirmed a bunch of them. So they call them a training facility, but they're sitting there waiting.
That's right. It's like the one at Nellis, for example. Now, Nellis has this prison camp system that's built right as part of the fence, the triple fencing that goes around the nuclear warhead storage facility. Well, it obviously serves dual purpose. Why put a prison camp right on the border of that fence if you aren't, in essence, going to use double duty and put prisoners in there for holdover if you have a massive influx of prisoners? And why, for example, at Seattle, do you have this big holding facility where they can fly people in ready for distribution and shipping out on rails? This is preparation for this kind of event. This facility in Seattle is massive, this holding facility, and it's nearly empty. They just keep enough prisoners going through there to keep the staff trained.
Oh, there you go. Sandpoint Naval Brig that they've still got is in my film Police State to the Takeover. I had the local newscast where at the G20, that was the WTO meeting in '99, they took thousands and put them in the, quote, old naval brig, and FEMA ran it. So that's my point. They admit it's sports stadiums, it's old brigs, it's old armories, it's old facilities. We learned a lot in the Emergency Centers Establishment Act. It said old bases, how they do it. That was an attempt to bring it out in the open and get more funding, but it told us basically the whole blueprint.
And it's interesting that Congress did, and I confirmed this, authorize funding to refurbish World War II prison camps, but I've checked that out, and there's nothing that's been active in that regard. It could be done in the future, but nothing has been done. So those rumors are false right now about those being refurbished and ready to go.
It's incredible. Shifting gears. Well, let me ask this question, then we'll get into the Russia situation, the Russia threat. The military is so awake and gave the majority of their contributions to Ron Paul. I see that in calls on the streets. The most awake group now is the military. Wasn't that case 10 years ago, but it's overwhelming and happening fast. The military callers say half their buddies or all their buddies. It's always above half, but sometimes all. Generally about 70% are totally awake now to a certain extent, they say. What is the system going to do? Just because they've got a bunch of commissars that want to put Americans in re-education camps and would love to, get you and I and others in there and break our noses, they're not going to get away with it. The minute they try that, it is going to be explosive. To say the least.
Well, think Blackwater. Think the special brigades of the mercenaries. These are being increased all of the time. These people are hungry for work. I'll bet you will see more and more of these specialized mercenaries moving in to engage in this rather than ordinary troops, because I think they would have a problem unless there was proper justification, which there won't be, obviously. So I think you're right. But they know about this. They know about this resistance. That's why they are really restricting Internet access to soldiers. They're tracking it.